Good evening.
Good morning, or good afternoon, actually.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Sent you the article on from the Dr. Brooks, no?
Yes.
About
Yep.
Was there some new information for you?
Not really. A lot of the information that I've been working on this for I don't know how many years, and so a lot of the information for me is already well known. Let's put it that way. So most of it is really information. The sad thing is our government doesn't recognize a lot of the medical complications that go along with it, including the children of atomic veterans and cleanup veterans. So, which is sad, because one side of our government, the CDC, says there's all sorts of complications, but yet the VA and that side of the government says there's only 21 or 22 presumptives. So we're working on that one also.
I just read the first report on fallout from the US government in 1961. And
okay.
I didn't have time to really research. I love science, and to read it up again, but it's the FDA health implications of fallout from nuclear weapons testing through 1961. Do you know this?
Actually, I live in an area that was affected by nuclear fallout. The radiation, what had happened was they did the test in Nevada, and I think it was in 1954, 55, something like that, and I can't remember the exact date. But what the cloud did, the cloud of radioactive materials went up into the atmosphere. The wind direction carried it over a city that is only maybe 20 or 30 miles from me. It's called Troy, New York. And then at the very same time that cloud was going over the Washington County, Troy area, it started raining. And the university in the Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute recorded high levels of radioactive material, of activity going on. So they called the government, and the government, of course, denied that anything like that could happen. But yet, many people were affected. The government did look at it. They did say, well, there's no danger. And there's a book out there. It's called A Good Day Has No Rain. And very interesting book. And I can't think of the author of it, but it's I know it's the Good Day Has No Rain. So it's a very interesting book.
In Europe, we had to deal with Chernobyl, and
Yes. Yep.
And Austria and Bavaria, I know, was affected, and during a period we had to all drink milk, powder milk, and and I heard that 2 years ago Canada had a fallout. I always listen to the hot seat, the nuclear hot seat. Do you know that show?
No, I don't. I'm not familiar with that. Certainly, we're the cleanup veterans and the atomic veterans certainly have done something that has affected the entire world the entire planet and everybody on it. You know, and we've been an actual part of that, which is interesting, but yet for many of us, many of our veteran friends that have passed away, life has become very difficult for the widows and the children that no longer have them.
So I don't know. Do you feel hurt hurt? Do you get much support by other veteran groups or anti-nuclear?
You know, it's yes and no. We've become very suspicious of people, which is sad, because there are groups out there like the anti-nuclear groups are great. I don't believe in nuclear weapons at all. I don't believe in anything really nuclear, because I know what damage it does and I know what harm it does. But there are those individuals out there who just want to use what we've been through and the knowledge that we have, use it against us versus for the good of us. And then there are other groups out there that are very, very, very supportive of what we're trying to achieve. So I guess you don't know which way to go sometimes, because anything you said could be used against what you believe in, and sometimes it's not good. But for the most part, everything goes well.
Why would you? Who would? I know that were under a code of silence for quite a while, but now I can understand still from if there would be civilians, or I don't know, much people that could use something against you.
Well, that's what there is. There are those that, sadly, there's always going to be someone that is a naysayer and says, no, it hasn't affected you. Those individuals don't realize that, they say, oh, the nuclear stuff, we've got to have it. Nuclear stuff, we've got to maintain it for world power and to make sure that the people of the United States are safe. There are those individuals who would say, even in the anti-nuclear group, they say, oh no, what they did was completely wrong. And, we shouldn't have done what we did. We shouldn't have cleaned up. We should have left it. There's all sorts of things out there that just sometimes you feel that you're doing the right thing, but then there's others out there that say, oh no, you're completely wrong. But for the most part, most are good. The biggest problem that I have is in dealing with just regular people, civilians that don't understand what nuclear energy and nuclear bombs and nuclear weapons. And I had one lady tell me one night on a Zoom meeting that, well, we should get rid of all the nuclear weapons. And I said to her, where are they going to go? Well, we'll just put them in the ground. And I said, we've tried that. The radioactive materials, the plutonium, the strontium, the cesium, the americium, the iodine 131, 129, it doesn't go away. Well, we'll just put it in the ground, she says. And it's where is it going to be safe on this planet for anyone? Like the Runit Dome itself. is leaking radioactive materials. The lagoon is leaking radioactive materials because of all the debris that they dumped in there. Now, even doing the nuclear testing, all that material, all that radioactive material went up into the air, and it's coming down on our heads all over the world every day. It comes into our drinking water and our plant life and our trees and our gardens. So every day you look at what's going on in the world today with the cancers and the cancer centers that are just popping up all over the place. When I was a young boy, you never heard of cancer. You never heard of diabetes. You never heard of any of these things that are related to radiation and radiation poisoning, ionizing radiation. You look at everything that's going on, but people still don't want to believe that there's a problem. So there are those out there that are saying, well, we're not affected by it. It's not going to bother us. And they want to ignore the truth. So, and everybody looks at Chernobyl and Fukushima and says, oh, what a horrible tragedy. But nobody looks at what the United States has done with all the testing that's taken place and the effects that it's had on the Marshallese people and people in Guam and the downwinders from New Mexico and Arizona and Utah. They don't look at all the plutonium facilities in Hanford. They don't look at the uranium mine workers. We've been pretty much ignored for 50, 60 years. And our governments keep saying, oh, it's not a problem. It's not a problem. So the people of the United States say, oh, we believe the government. I'm sorry.
Are you in contact international? Did you visit the British atomic veterans?
Oh yes. Oh yes. Yeah, I spoke with Alan Owen the other day, briefly. A friend of ours out of France. I haven't spoke with him recently. I've got a friend that lives in I want to say the Netherlands, but I may be mistaken. He's a scientist that does flora and fauna. He was up in Chernobyl. He wanted to go to Marshall Islands and study the plant life and the animals and everything there. And I speak with people from Guam. Mm-hmm. I don't believe we were ever told we could never say anything, because there were newspaper articles that were coming out when we were doing the cleanup. So honestly, I don't think we did have a security clearance. And I'm sure if we divulged some sort of technical information, which none of us really had, we would have been in trouble. We could have ended up in Fort Leavenworth for a good number of years. But I don't think we were ever told we could never speak about it. So there was.
Do the atomic veterans speak in classrooms?
Yes. Yep. They do now. They can. Since 1996, the declassification of the classified information that released the atomic veterans from their vow of silence, so to speak. But as far as the cleanup veterans goes, I don't believe we were ever told we could never say anything. And even if we did, like I would tell my wife, Kathy, about the things that we did many years ago. I would tell her about the things that we did in the Marshall Islands. And she said, you know, that can't be true. You're just telling a tall tale. You know, you're lying about something that never happened, because who would believe it? Who would believe that they would send the military to a chain of islands in the middle of nowhere to clean up radioactive material and put it in a concrete dome? It sounds like a story, a fairy tale. But she started to learn after we started going out and meeting more and more veterans and looking into it and everything. She said, geez, maybe you were telling the truth. So
what newspapers were publishing the cleanup by then?
the Army Times was back in the 77, 78. The Army Times was putting things out. The Honolulu newspaper from Hawaii was putting articles out. The hometown newspapers, and I can't give you any names because you know, the hometown newspapers in certain areas would put, you know, private such and such is in the Marshall Islands cleaning up, you know, radioactive materials. So they were out there. The articles were out there. So, and then shortly after we left there, people started contacting their representatives and newspaper articles and doing things, but nobody ever believed it. You know, nobody ever believed any of it. So it just kind of fell by the wayside. And of course, the government has always put it out there. And you look at your TV shows and you look at the movies that were made, like Godzilla. Godzilla was created because of a nuclear bomb blast. You look at SpongeBob, from Bikini, which is, you know, is a mutation of you know, fish and everything from the ocean because of so we've been indoctrinated into believing that radioactive materials and radioactive nuclear weapons is not of any danger to anyone. You look at all the even the Twilight Zone. I don't know if you've ever seen that or not, but it in several of them, the one that I'm thinking of right now, the guy come out of the basement and the whole world was blown up, and all he was concerned about was going to the library and reading. But you can't, you know, it's given to people the false sense that you will survive a nuclear blast unless you're in the center of it, and nothing bad will happen to you. So people looked at the articles and said, oh, well, that's nice. They're cleaning up something, not realizing, not knowing that the radiation will kill you eventually. You know, and it goes, and what's sad is it goes, my children could be affected. My grandchildren could be affected. So most of the population doesn't even realize that the dangers that you know, nuclear weapons and nuclear energy and nuclear power presents.
I have to check that up with the British vets if they feel that that Britain or Europe is more aware of this.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's what many of the people that I talk to, even about it today, they say, "Oh, geez, we're not in any danger." And then I say that, well, wait a minute. Why if we're not in any danger, if none of us are in any danger of anything, why are there so many cancer centers? Why are so many people, and diabetes is a big one for radiation poisoning. And why are there so many people with diabetes these days? And, you know, they say, well, people are eating differently. People are doing different things. Yes, they are. And they have to, because of the amount of radiation that is traveling through the air and coming down on our heads all the time. And, you know, it only takes one little speck of plutonium to enter your body and create havoc with cancers and issues and problems. And so I don't think the world really understands or knows. You know, they look at Chernobyl, they look at Fukushima and say, oh, this is a tragedy around that area. Those people are so affected by it. But those were different nuclear incidents. Those weren't sending clouds of radioactive ash into the air. You know, it did affect the area around them, but it didn't affect the world.
Do you get lots of press at the moment these days?
No, not really. No, very little. Very little. You have to, I've had a couple of articles that were written in my local newspaper about the cleanup veterans and things like that. But other than that, no. I really, honestly, I'm tired. I've been fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting, and no one understands what I'm even fighting for. They say, why are you even bothering? Well, because it affects you, it affects me, it affects the children, it affects everyone. And our government continues to deny. And this is now going back in history, World War, at the end of World War II, and everything was done. And then all of a sudden the world started saying, and the United States started saying, oh my God, the scientists have done experiments on people in Germany. And so they had the Nuremberg trials. And it was a worldwide thing. And they said, oh my God, the atrocities that took place. It's horrible. It's horrible. So the United States jumped on board and said, you know, the human rights thing is you know, they've been violated. And just, you know, the experiments that are done are horrible. But the United States has done just as bad with the Marshallese people. They've done just as bad with the atomic veterans. They've done just as bad with the cleanup veterans. We've all been studied. We've all been treated as well, it's going to be lab rats. We've been treated as lab rats, you know, and studied. And I don't see any difference in this, what happened to the Marshallese, the cleanup veterans, the people from Hanford, the downwinders, and all those affected by ionizing radiation. But yet our government denies it.
How did you get studied? Can you describe this more? What's happened? Were they like, oh, you're back home. we're gonna make tests on you, or what did happen?
Well, you look at a timeline for when we were in the Marshall Islands. We were there in 1977 through 1980. Well, in 1954, I believe it was, on the Bikini Atoll, the largest thermonuclear weapon was exploded over Bikini. That cloud of radioactive ash went over the island of Rongelap, where the Marshallese people had been relocated. And those people, rather than the government come in and take them off the islands very quickly, they left them there to study them. Now, those people were moved off that island eventually into what would be considered an internment camp. There was barbed wire fences. They were controlled. What they did, they were studied by doctors and scientists as far as what effects that radiation had on them. Then they were moved back to the island of Rongelap until 1985. That was 5 years after we had left the islands. One of the things that, and it may mean nothing, but we would, the cleanup veterans were getting together and saying, well, I'm blood type O negative. I'm blood type O positive. I'm blood type O. We found that many of the participants in that cleanup were all of the same blood type. And then there was another group of individuals with a different blood type. So honestly, we were studied. We were treated as guinea pigs to see what would happen if we did go in and try to clean up the islands. If they wanted to do it properly, they would have spent the money to have civilians go in there with cleanup, with all the protective
ABC suit.
Yes, exactly. They would have those guys go in there and do it. But instead, they sent 18-year-old, 19-year-olds in there to do this work.
But what tests did they make then with you? I mean, you were not in, you got sent home, and how did you get studied by the
Afterwards. I'm not sure if, well, it's a guess of mine that our government has the ability to reach into your medical records and see what's going on, is my thought. And I may be very paranoid about that, but and somewhat suspicious that the government can, our government has the ability to do whatever it wants to do. So if the Marshallese people were studied and watched and still being studied and watched, what makes them think that we are not being studied also right now? The government will not give us any data on who is still alive and who has passed away. And I know darn well that they've got that information
from your comrades.
Yes. Well, they've got that. Yeah, we don't know exactly how many of us are still alive, and we've asked the government on several occasions to provide that information to us, and they refuse to. They won't give us that information.
You need a social media manager. So,
Yeah.
so you're just a call out all the Enewetak cleanup veterans to call the atomic veterans.
Yeah, well, that's it. I am, well, we have tried everything. Honestly, we've tried all sorts of ways to get them to, we've even went so far as to say, well, there's only 300 of us alive.
How many people, for how long were you in Enewetak?
In Enewetak, I was there for 6 months. I was there on May 17th of 1977, and I left there in September of 1977. So I was there 6 months. And
how many people, how big was the cleanup battalion? Or
there was only the initial, we were the third group there. Now the first, I'll go back. The first group went in, they were Navy SEALs, and they went in and they were told they were on an exercise and they were just blowing things up. So what they did was they went in there, blew up the coral reef, made it the lagoon large enough so that they could get larger ships into the lagoon. They blew up other coral reefs so landing craft could get onto the islands. They left. Another group came for 4 or 5 days or 3 weeks, whatever it was, and they picked up stone from one island and brought it to the island that we were going to live on. And then they left. And then a group of 35 of us went in, got there on May 17th of 1977, and we started the construction of the base camp on Lojoa. So that was, we had to clear the islands. We had to clear the island of all the brush and all the things that were there. And then another group came in. They stayed on Enewetak. And what they did was they pre-built the buildings and then put them on a ship and then sent them over to us. In the meantime, as we're clearing the islands, we're building the concrete pads that these buildings are going to sit on. And then as soon as a building would get there, we would construct the building. And this went on for the 6 months that I was there.
And you did this in a t-shirt?
In t-shirts and shorts, yes, we did. Most of the time it was just a pair of shorts and boots because it was so hot. And you would work 12 hours a day, 6 days a week.
And how come you went to the army? What was your job? How did you get trained in the army?
I was a carpenter. I was a 51B, which was a carpenter. So, and the reason I went in the service was a couple of my friends were already in, and I wanted to go to Europe to ski. That's what I wanted to ski the Alps. That was my idea. And they sent me to Hawaii. So, so it was completely the wrong direction. But I joined because I wanted to see some of the world. I wanted to do my duty as an American, serve in the military. And there were several reasons, and then they, of course, I get to Hawaii and they send me to the Marshall Islands. So.
How long were you then? Sorry, how long were you in the army by then?
I was in the army. I was in Hawaii for about 6 months, I think, before they sent me to the Marshalls. Yeah, I did my basic training, did my advanced training. They sent me to Hawaii, And a couple of months after being in Hawaii, they sent us to the Marshall Islands.
So what was the mission? The mission statement, was that a secret, or did they? What exactly did they tell you? You go now.
Yeah, well, yes, yep. What all we were told was we were going to go to the Marshall Islands to build a base camp for approximately 500 men, and that's what we were told.
And yeah, you weren't allowed to ask why.
Well, it wouldn't matter if we asked why or not. The military doesn't have to tell us anything. So they just say, all they've got to say is get on the plane, you're going here, and that's it. So really the military doesn't have to tell us anything. And in fact, they didn't. They didn't tell us what the whole mission was. They didn't tell us that there were people there before us. They didn't tell us how our aggregate or a stone that we used to build the concrete pads for the buildings had came from an island that was highly contaminated, which made that stone highly contaminated. You know, they didn't tell us that. They didn't tell us about any radioactive materials that we could possibly be affected by. So they didn't tell us anything. Some people claim that they did, but as far as our group goes, we were never told. We figured it out once we got there, and saw the radiological equipment that was on the island of Brunet. One of the guys had some education in that, and he said, wait a minute, this is all radioactive materials. So we were, and then we were told the island that we lived on which doesn't make any sense. The southern islands were deemed low levels of contamination. The northern islands were considered highly contaminated. From the island of Brunet on up was considered highly radioactive because of all the nuclear tests that had taken place. The 42 nuclear and then the 1 thermonuclear had been, had been taking place in the northern islands. We were in the middle of the northern islands, but yet a statement came out by some colonel that said the island of Lojua is not radioactive and contains only low levels of radioactive materials. But yet we were in the middle of the highly contaminated areas, and we could never understand why that was. And then on top of that, when we were excavating and clearing all the brush and everything, we found concrete pads that were already there. So we set our tents up on those concrete pads. And it was many, 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 many years later when we found out that those concrete pads were actually the very first base camp. But after they did the first blast, the first test, they found that island was contaminated. So they put all this material over the top of it, moved everybody off, and then left it as it was, then went on with their testing. So,
what do you mean by nuclear equipment? What did they have, like a testing tower or?
Oh no, they had they called them imps. It was what did it look like? You've seen those buggies that go in the snow and carry with the tracks on them and like that. That's what it looked like. But it would they would drive it around and you'd sit inside of it, and then they would test for radioactive materials. So that was on the islands. They had all sorts of other, they had, must have been scientists were there on Runette at one time, because they had the equipment set up, the tent set up, and we weren't allowed on the island, so we never got there.
But did they wear suits?
Oh, I have no idea. We weren't that close to them, so we couldn't really tell what was going on.
Okay.
But one of the guys knew. He said he said that was radioactive. You know, they were testing for radiation.
And what was your reaction? Were you then all freaked out on the island?
No, I didn't. I live in a community that is got more of a population of cows than it does people. So growing up, our education system was such that they said, well, you're just either going to end up a farmer or a factory worker. So we're not wasting our time on an education. So we were very, many of us were very naive when it came to anything like that.
And so you come home from so you built up those the dome basically, no?
Well, yeah, what they did, somebody else did that. When I left there, the base camp, they had power, they had a mess hall, they had the barracks to live in, the buildings to live in. And then I came back to Hawaii and spent the rest of my time in the military in Hawaii. And then got out of the service in 1980. And that was it. I hadn't thought about it for years. And a friend of mine that I was served with said, hey, there's a website, a Facebook page. You should check it out and see what you know. And so I did. And it was basically just a website with a couple of guys on it. And we talked, about our experiences, what we did. And then we started talking about, well, wait a minute. I had cancer. I had this, I had that. And that's when we started looking into it a little deeper. There was more to it than just a bunch of guys getting together. Now there was serious medical issues taking place here. And so ever since then, it's grown. And then we went, I forget when it was, we went down to Washington for a thing called Operation Stand Together. And from there, the group got much larger. Then we started looking into it even more and more and more. And we thought we were alone. For the longest time, we thought we were alone. We didn't know, honestly, about the atomic veterans. We didn't know about Hanford. We didn't know about the Downwinders or the things that took place with the Marshallese people. We didn't even, I gotta say, I didn't know and never met any Marshallese people until a couple of years ago when we were at a convention in Dayton, Ohio. And ever since then, our group has grown to include the British, the French, the Marshallese, the Downwinders, the Hanford people, the cleanup veterans, the atomic veterans. So we have actually grown quite a bit in just a few years.
So when did you start to see or feel health effects personally?
In 2001, I had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And it took me, I think it was a year or so to get over it and get better. And I haven't had any real health issues since then. But the non-Hodgkin's lymphoma could be traced back to my time in the Marshall Islands.
And was it, what did your doctor say? Did he say that could be true, or?
I've got documents stating that, well, what they say is more likely than not, it's the effects of my time in the Marshall Islands. That's what my doctors, the statements and the letters I've gotten from my doctors are saying more likely than not. They aren't saying definitely, and they aren't saying definitely not. They're just saying more likely than not. So, and it doesn't do me any good because our government doesn't recognize us as atomic veterans or cleanup veterans. So
a lot of people from the atomic veterans and the cleanup, they fight for getting a medal.
A medal and a cup of coffee, or a medal and $1 will get you a cup of coffee. But no, what we want is to be recognized. We want the benefits of atomic veterans. Right now, if I get cancer, I have to rely on my own private medical care. I cannot go to the Veterans Affairs the Veterans Administration or the doctors and say, hey, I've got cancer, you got to treat me because, well, I'm a cleanup veteran or I'm an atomic veteran. They look at me and say, no, we don't. You're not considered an atomic veteran, so we don't have to take care of you. Now, one of the things I'm fighting for is some of our guys have serious medical issues that could be related to their time in the Marshall Islands, but they don't have the private care. They don't have the private medical care necessary to keep them going. So they're dying off or they're just barely surviving. We don't get compensated for our illnesses. So many of the people, are living in poverty, I think. I've been very fortunate. I've got a nice little business, and I can afford to make a good living. But there are those out there that have lost the use of their legs. They've lost, they're ill with sickness, and so they can't work. So their quality of their life is not what it should be. And again, our government continues to deny any responsibility. The people that have lost, my good friends who have passed away because of cancers and illnesses, now their wives, the children, have had to change their lives, and they can't do, if their husband was the supporter of the family, and he mowed the lawns and he took care of the snow removal and he took all the trash out to the curbside or whatever it is he did, he can no longer do that because he's not there. So the wives have to change their life and move into apartments or sell their homes or get a second job just to pay the rent. There's no compensation for anyone. So,
but what does the government say? I mean, the health effects were already published in the 60s. I mean, But they said you could have been informed and get yourself an ABC suit, or
No, that's the thing. Our government, the original atomic veterans, many of them they said, all right, we're going to have an event today. You got to be on the ship, the top of the ship there, and you're going to stand and watch this blast. So they did. They watched it. They all went back to whatever they were doing. They got home. They were told never to speak about it. And people started getting sick. The atomic veterans started getting sick through radioactive material, the ionizing radiation. And along with the strontium and the cesium and the iodine and all of that. So the government denied and denied and denied any responsibility. They said, no, you're fine, you're safe, you didn't do anything bad. Well, they finally got their presumptives in 96, 97, somewheres in that area, the original atomic veterans. And then they were eligible to get VA care, veterans care. They were eligible for compensation through the government for their illnesses and for what they had, what they can no longer work, so they have to be compensated through the government. They were covered through it's called the RECA bill. That's Radiation Exposed Veterans Compensation Act is what it was. So if you died of a presumptive illness, the government would pay the living spouse or the children. We are not eligible for any of that. None of it. We get absolutely zero. Our government still denies that we were ever exposed to radiation. So we are not eligible for anything.
but it is published, well documented, and the islanders.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I have spent, I don't know how many thousands of dollars going to Washington, D.C. I've testified along with a few other veteran friends of mine before a roundtable committee in Congress. I've written testimonies for the VA committees. I don't know how many trips I've taken to DC, how many representatives, the congressional members and the Senate members I've seen and spoke with. And they all say, well, we're working on your bill. Hopefully it'll be passed. And so nothing is ever done. So the government continues to deny. And that's the bottom line of it. They continue to deny we were ever exposed.
And when did you get the latest update, last update on that?
On our bills?
Yeah.
Just recently. There's one bill right now. We've got the Mark Takai bill, which is ongoing with both the Senate and the House. They're working on another bill. It's called the PACT Act. And that encompasses many, many groups of veterans who have been affected. Burn pit victims, the
Agent Orange.
Well, no, not so much Agent Orange, because that's already taken care of. So there are a couple of bills in there for Thailand, Panama, and there's another one in there. Some guys aren't covered from South Vietnam through Agent Orange, but this bill includes us, includes the individuals affected by toxins. It includes Palomares, which is another incident that took place in '63 when when two planes collided in Palomares, Italy, and they had contained nuclear weapons. So that's another interesting story, which the government still to this day denies. So we're included in that. That bill there is going very well, but it also carries a $1.5 trillion price tag. And people say, "Oh my God, that's a lot of money," and it is a lot of money, but it's over a 10-year period, so it's only a couple billion a year. So you know, we're trying, we're fighting, but we're getting nowheres.
I smoke one too.
Yeah.
So how many do you have contact to some Navy SEALs?
Yes, I do. Actually, a friend of mine, his name is Robert Foley. He lives in Maine. He's not doing well. He was swimming in all of that radioactive material, doing all the blasting and everything. I spoke to him maybe a month ago, and he's got some serious medical issues because of, and again, I think, and I know the government still denies, he's testified in front of committees before, and still he's had, you know, got nowheres.
And so how long did you spend on research? Are you now a radiation expert?
No, good God, no. Oh, good gosh, no. No, no, I am not. Unfortunately, I am not. I just know a whole bunch of stuff. That's about it. So there's no, it seems like every time I learn something more and learn something new. And I wish I could retain all the information that I've gotten, but I tend to forget things. So.
Is there another archive than the Atomic Veteran, the NAVA?
The NAAVA, yes. That's the National Association of Atomic Veterans. I'm also, Keith Kiefer is the commander of the NAAV, and I am the New York State commander of the NAAV.
So how many people are there in New York?
Well, up until I just did the recent update in October, and I think I'm down to 41 people, 41 atomic veterans in New York.
And how often do you meet? Or
well, what I do is I try to, I'm just recently the newest commander. So what I did was I updated in October, I updated the files. And now every once in a while, I'll just pick a couple of names and give them a call, see how they're doing. They'll call me if they need something. They just recently, a lady called me and she said, "I'm having a hard time getting my benefits from the RECA bill." And so what I did was I reached out to her congresswoman that in her area. I talked to her son. I talked to the VA representative out there in Oneonta. And then I also have all the information for her to fill out. So I sent her that information to help her get the reach.
Are the files, do the cleanup veterans have an official website?
Yes, it's the Atomic. I could send you the link for that, I think, if I could figure out how to send it to you. But it's the Atomic Veterans.
So it's you're on the official and National Association Atomic Veterans.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Usually I don't say too much on anything. I usually keep to myself. So, you know, as far as the NAAV goes, I keep to myself. And then also any of the websites, I don't post very much of anything. So I try to keep everything that I do somewhat private.
And but so you rather not rally and you stick together with the Atomic Veterans, because it's just do the New Yorkers meet and rally at the cleanup vets on their own?
Actually not recently that I know of. I would like to see the Atomic Veterans get together with the cleanup veterans in New York. We are spread out. New York's a pretty big state, and all the Atomic Veterans are in their late 80s, early 90s. So they aren't as mobile as what the younger folks are.
But you don't have a website with videos or?
There are some, yes, but again, there's the age of most of the Atomic Veterans and some of the cleanup veterans are not familiar with modern technology. They're still using the rotary phones. So, and they don't have cell phones and they don't have computers.
Are you in another veteran association, in a Navy veteran association in New York?
The naval associations, I don't understand.
No, just in another veteran association in New York.
No, there is just as far as I know, there are a number of different groups. But I'm only a member of the NAV group and the cleanup veterans group. I can get you onto, we've got a website, it's called the Remembrance site. And what it is a site that both Marshallese and cleanup veterans can go to, and anybody can, you know, it's an open site, so anybody can join basically, or it's a closed group, but basically if you wanted to join, we could send to get where I got to go.
Do you know of those? Did you hear about this big bomb that dropped in the Atlantic Ocean?
No.
Just
recently, or?
Yeah. It was by a nuclear ship, and I sent you the video. It doesn't say much, but it's really big.
I know a few years ago, one had been lost at sea, and there was a problem. The Russians were looking for it, I believe, and the Americans were looking for it.
U.S. Navy detonates 40-pound bomb. Here. That was the 40-pound bomb detonated in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, the USS Gerald Ford aircraft carrier.
Oh, I had not heard about that.
Yeah, the test was conducted Friday, 100 miles from Florida's Daytona Beach, which experienced magnitude earthquake following the 3.9 magnitude earthquake following the implosion.
Oh, geez. You know, I don't see any need for any of that personally. Everybody says, save the planet, save the planet, save the planet. Well, you know what? The planet's going to be around. We're not going to be around. The planet's going to live on through earthquakes and tornadoes and the hurricanes and volcanoes. Everything the earth is going to do is cover everything up, and people are going to be gone. And everybody's concerned about, we got to save this, we got to save that. Well, maybe we ought to consider saving ourselves first, because we're going to do ourselves in. Whether it's Russia that says that sends the first bomb, or United States, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's France or Great Britain. We're going to blow ourselves up. And we do have to get rid of this. We have to stop this foolish testing. We have to stop putting more radioactive materials into the air and into the atmosphere.
Norwegian in Norway, they built the last few years a big bunker for radioactive waste, and it gets transported now the last years to, I don't know, it's real deep in the earth.
Yeah.
And the French did lots of tests, no?
Yes. Yep. French did a lot of testing. There's no real safe way to contain radioactive materials. There's no real safe way to clean up radioactive materials. And once it's in the ground, it's in the soil, it's in the plant life, it's in the water. How do you get rid of all that? And it only takes the one little speck to get into your system, and it kills you eventually. Every one of the cleanup veterans that I know, every day you go to bed, every night you go to bed, and you kind of wonder, am I going to be sick tomorrow? Am I going to make it through tomorrow? And every day you wonder, is it going to be my day that I end up ill and pass away? Because that's our reality. And I wish more and more people would understand what this whole thing has done, what the whole nuclear legacy has done to people. And nobody understands how horrible it really is to go to bed at night, to wake up in the morning and wonder. So we live each day as best as we can.
it's so, yeah.
Yeah, we didn't have any. We had the cleanup veterans. There was no women there. They wouldn't allow women to be on the islands because of the dangers of the ladies getting later on in life. If there was more, all right, so there was more possibilities for ladies to contract cancers and medical issues with childbirth and everything else due to the radiation than there were men. So they didn't allow the women on the islands.
When did you find out about this?
Jeepers, just recently, I think, in the last couple of years. So so no women were allowed to be on the islands. Although they did have, after I was gone, they had USO shows where women would come over and perform, and sing and stuff like that, and then they would leave. But there was no ladies, no military ladies there working at all.
Super sound.
All righty.
Then talk to you later.
All righty.
Have a lovely day.
You too. Enjoy your afternoon.